My mom wants to defend my sister for stealing from me and is threatening to send me to military school. This happened when I was 14, about a year before my parents divorced. My younger sister spent her allowance like it was nothing, especially on makeup, fast food, video games, and clothes from Hot Topic. I also had an allowance, but my dad made me earn it by cleaning the house and doing yard work. My sister never did chores unless dad was there to supervise, and mom rarely made her do anything, except clean her room for extra cash. I mowed lawns, collected cans to cash in for the deposit, and took on odd jobs around the neighborhood. I was saving for a scooter, and over 2 years, I managed to save around $2,000. It wasn't easy, mainly because my sister knew all my hiding spots and would steal from me. Here's a paraphrased example of our exchanges. Me: "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" Sis: "What? No." Me: "You're a terrible liar. There's $100 missing from my stash." Sis: "Leave me alone. I didn't do it." Starts fake crying and runs to mom. Sis: "Mom, bro is picking on me." Me: "She stole from my savings again." Mom: "Stop. Can't you see mama's little girl is upset? She said she didn't do it, so she didn't do it." Me: "If you don't let this go, I'll tell dad." Mom: "There's no need for that. Besides, you have no proof." She took your money. Me: "Yes, I do. I keep a ledger for every dollar. 3 days ago, it was $400, and now there's only $300. $100 is missing, and she's stolen from my savings before. Plus, I know she spent all her allowance this month, yet you took her shopping yesterday. Where did she get that money?" Mom pauses, then scowls. "You know what? You're grounded. Go to your room, or I'll get the belt." I could have argued more, but I learned when to stop talking in that house. So, without another word, I walked to my room and slammed the door. I pulled out my old brick Nokia and dialed my dad at work. He didn't pick up, so I left a message explaining everything. About an hour later, he called back saying he'd sorted out. Not long after, I heard the landline ringing, followed by my mom yelling at dad in the kitchen. I tried to listen from my room, catching bits of her justifying her actions, but it never worked when she was in the wrong. Eventually, I heard her yell something like, "Fine. If she really took the money, then you can pay it back because she already spent it." My mother threw open my door, screaming at me. "I can't believe you ratted me out, you little ingrate. After all I do for you, you couldn't just let a little money slide?" "So you admit that my sister took it then?" I asked. Mom sneered. "You know what? I don't care. Girls need more money than boys. You should just be giving it to her anyway. It wasn't even that much." "It wasn't just a little money, and you know it. She stole $100, and even if it was just $1, I'd still want it back. You wouldn't want someone stealing from your purse, so why is it different when she steals from me? She's guilty, and I want that money returned one way or another. I worked hard for it, and she did nothing." "My baby doesn't have to do anything," Mom said, her voice dripping with disdain. "She is a princess and deserves to be treated like one." "That's not my problem," I replied. "She can go be a princess away from me and away from my stuff." "You little, I'm gonna beat your ass," Mom yelled. I stood up, facing her eye to eye. At 14, I was already as tall as her and pretty strong from all the outdoor work I'd been doing. "Go ahead and try. I didn't do anything wrong, and I won't let you." My mother froze for a moment, shocked, then let out a loud roar and swung her arm, trying to knock something off my dresser. But she missed and hit the dresser itself instead. I imagine hitting the dresser really hurt her. She grabbed her hand, trying to hold in the pain, glaring at me while gnashing her teeth. Then she just turned around and walked out, making a ruckus as she went down the hall, smacking the walls and yelling. I heard her stomp down the stairs and into the kitchen, where she did what she always did when she didn't get her way. Headed straight for the wine fridge to get drunk. My sister had been watching from her bedroom door, and when she saw what happened, she looked horrified before fleeing back into her room and slamming the door. Mom had always been her ace in the hole, helping her get away with the things she did to me. But that was changing fast. A few hours later, my dad came home from work and marched my sister into my room. He made her admit to stealing from me and then told me I wasn't grounded. Sis refused to look at me the entire time, apologizing in the quietest, squeakiest voice. Dad had to repeatedly tell her to speak up until she was practically yelling her apology. Then, he handed me a $100 bill to make up for what she took, saying she was grounded for a week and that the stolen money would come out of her allowance. She immediately started bawling, calling Dad awful before running off to her room. Mom, meanwhile, sat on the back patio, getting drunk on her favorite wine, completely ignoring all of us. She never apologized to me and acted like the whole situation never happened. A few days later, my sister got her allowance anyway. But this time, it was Mom who gave it to her, not Dad. A few days after that, on Dad's day off, we went to a local store and he bought me a combination safe to keep my money and other valuables in. We didn't tell either my mother or sister about it. It had a 4-digit code. If I remember correctly, the code I used back then was 4962. I put all of my money into the safe, locked it, and hid it in the back of my closet. A few weeks went by, and one day, after I got back from mowing some neighbors' lawns, I found my room completely ransacked. I called my mother to tell her what my sister had done. As expected, Mom immediately denied it. "My baby didn't do this," she said. "Well, if she didn't, then did you?" I asked. Mom paused before snapping, "No." "Well, it could only have been one of you," I said, pointing out that the room was clean when I left and no one else had been home. Visibly annoyed at being caught by logic, she finally admitted, "Fine, but if she did do it, then so what? You had it coming for not being nicer to her anyway," before storming off. I called my dad again and left another message on his work answering machine about what had happened. Then I went to my sister's room and confronted her. "I know you're the one who tore up my room," I said. Before she could respond, I added, "But you can't get to my money anymore. It's locked away in a safe." That set her off, and she threw a full-blown tantrum. Of course, evil Mama Bear came running to her rescue, but I just repeated that my sister couldn't get to my money anymore and left them to deal with their frustration. I went back to my room to clean up while my sister screamed in her room for the next 20 minutes. Nothing was really missing or broken. Everything was just tossed around. As I cleaned, I couldn't help but feel smug. It was probably the smuggest I'd ever felt while picking up my room. But then, the next day, I found my room torn up again, but this time, my window was broken too. My sister had thrown the safe out of the window because she couldn't get it open. I immediately called my father, and when both of my parents got home from work, my sister admitted to it, almost like she was proud of herself. My mother, predictably, tried to take her side by saying that I shouldn't have gotten the safe in the first place. But my dad wasn't having it. He chewed her out, explaining that he got me the safe because he was sick of my sister constantly stealing from me. Every time she took money and spent it, it was Dad who had to reimburse me since Mom never would. We had to replace the entire window, and my dad installed a lock on my bedroom door. He also put up a combination key lockbox near the door that contained the key to my room, giving me extra security. My sister ended up grounded for a month for breaking the window, but during that time, she just sulked in her room whenever Dad was home. Of course, when he was at work, Mom let her do whatever she wanted, playing video games, watching TV, the usual. I didn't bother saying anything because I knew it would just make things worse for me. Both my sister and Mom would go out of their way to make my life miserable if I spoke up. After her month-long grounding, my sister resorted to begging me for money every time she ran out of her allowance. But I always called her out on it, reminding her that she'd never pay me back since she never saved anything. Just to be funny, I even drew up an IOU one day to see if she'd sign it in front of Dad. Instead, she tore it in half and went crying to Mom, complaining that I was being mean to her. Mom and my sister tried to pressure me into giving her money, but I just reminded them what Dad would do if he found out. After that, my sister gave up on trying to get money from me because she knew it wasn't going to happen. At one point, Mom actually tried to get me sent to military school, but Dad didn't let her. For those wondering why my dad didn't just help me open a savings account back then, I honestly don't know. I guess keeping money in cash at home was just the way we did things at the time. Update 1 to come next. Not long after my dad gave me a safe for my money, he also installed a deadbolt lock on my bedroom door. It came with a wall-mounted lockbox that required a code to get the key, which we set up together after my sister threw my safe through the window. We did all this while my mom and sister were out. When they got home, my sister was the first to notice the lock. She stared at it for a second before running to get my mom, and soon they both came storming up the stairs, only to be greeted by my dad and me. Here's a paraphrased version of what went down. Mom snapped her fingers a few times, pointing at the lock. "What the hell is that?" Dad replied calmly, "It's a door lock." Mom, getting angrier, said, "I know what it is. Why is it there?" Dad, still calm, responded, "Because you never bother to punish or stop our daughter from stealing from Kegel or ransacking his room. So, from now on, the lock stays?" Mom, fuming, retorted, "He's only 14, and this is my house. He can't have a lock on his door." Dad didn't miss a beat. "Actually, this is our house, and last I checked, I pay most of the mortgage and bills. You barely contribute, and I'm tired of you favoring our daughter so much that Kegel keeps suffering for it." Mom, not willing to back down, demanded, "Then at least tell me the code for the lockbox." Dad gave her a deadpan stare. "No, I'm not doing that because you've shown I can't trust you anymore." At that point, Mom completely lost it and stormed down the stairs, furious. My sister just stood there, pouting before slowly walking back to her room. Things improved after that, with the new lock in place. It became a habit for me to lock my door every time I left my room, but I often caught my mom and sister watching me with frustrated expressions, clearly unhappy with the new arrangement. When I input the code to get the key, I always made sure to block their view with my hand or body. They hated that, but there wasn't anything they could do about it. One day, near the end of the month, my sister came begging me for $40 to buy a video game she really wanted. Me: "Why do you keep asking me for money when we both know you'll never pay it back?" Sister: "I will pay it back. I swear." Me: "No, you won't. You spend everything you have and then some every month, and you'd rather use your allowance to buy stuff than pay me back. You always do." Sister: "No, I don't." Me: "All right, let's test that." I went into my room, grabbed a piece of paper and pen, and hand-wrote an IOU contract that stated she would pay me back the $40 when she received her monthly allowance. I also made sure the IOU was to be co-signed by Dad as a witness. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. My sister read the paper, started sniffling, tore it in half, and ran crying to Mom, just like she always did when she didn't get her way. Sister, sobbing, "Moom, what is this? What did Kegel do now?" Mom: "What is it, my little princess?" "What did Kegel do?" Me: "She wanted to borrow money, so I asked her to sign an IOU in front of Dad, and she freaked out." Mom: "And why would you do that?" "She just wanted to borrow a little money." Me: "Would you sign the IOU too to make sure she pays it back?" Mom, furious: I don't have to sign anything, just loan her the money." Me: "Not without a signed IOU." Mom stood up, her arm raised like she was about to hit me, but then she retracted it. "You're just like your father. You always need a paper trail for everything." I hate it. As I started walking up the stairs to my room, Mom yelled after me. Me: "I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like Dad. It's far better than being like you and Sis because you never do anything good." Mom: "What was that, you little—" She started storming up the stairs just as I got into my room and locked the door. Back then, my mom had this habit of throwing my door open to yell at me, doing it in one sweeping motion while lunging her body forward. The lock was still fairly new, so she wasn't used to it yet. I locked the deadbolt, and when she tried to throw open my door, she slammed right into it with a loud thud. I heard her fall to the floor and start crying out in pain. She'd hit her face and body hard against the door, which was solid wood, leaving her with a fat lip and a bump on her forehead. I opened the door to find her sprawled on the floor, pounding her fists. Mom, you did this to me, you little… Me. You did it to yourself. Mom, you're grounded. Get out of my sight. I called Dad, and he just groaned when I told him what happened. He said I wasn't grounded, but that I was still in trouble for provoking her, and that he'd deal with her when he got home. I ended up getting a stern lecture, extra chores, and a reduction in my allowance. But that was about it. From that day on, every time Sis asked me for money, I always asked Sis to sign an IOU whenever she asked for money, and she hated it. Update. My mother tried to send me to military school and forged my dad's signature. It blew up in her face. After the last time I stood up to my mom when she threatened to spank me, she became more cautious. I guess she realized that if she tried to attack me again, it wouldn't end well for her. She mostly resorted to yelling and didn't lay a finger on me again. At least, not until the whole house situation years later. I didn't think much of it at the time and just went on with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was coming up, and my dad surprised me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town. He said I should keep saving for a car instead of wasting money on a scooter. I agreed and kept saving for that car. A few days after that, while I was sweeping grass off the back patio after mowing the lawn, I found a pamphlet for a military school under one of the chairs where my mom liked to sit and drink her wine. I immediately had a bad feeling she was planning something crazy. I decided to wait until my dad got home before showing him what I'd found. When he saw it, he was mad, but didn't jump to any conclusions. He took the pamphlet to my mom and asked her about it. Dad, honey, what's this? Mom went pale when she saw the pamphlet. Mom, it's nothing. I've never seen it before. Dad, really? Because it looks like you were planning on sending Kegel to military school, and you know I wouldn't allow that. That's when my mom finally dropped the act and yelled, he needs to learn some discipline. Mom snapped, he locks his door all the time, and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat. Dad replied, Kegel did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your stupid favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat, thanks to the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing from her brother. As far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Kegel to military school is over. And if you try to send him, so help me, I'll bring the hammer down on you any way I can. Mom, frustrated, shot back. Well, I guess this whole family's just going to take away what little power I have left in this house. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing. Dad, calm but firm, replied, you and I both know you'd rather keel over than be nothing. Stop being so dramatic. Kegel is growing up, and he's his own man now, with his own money. Mom just stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited until she left for work, then dug out what she was trying to hide. It was an application for the military school, filled out entirely in her handwriting. It required the signatures of both parents or legal guardians, and there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized Mom's, but the other was a sad attempt to forge Dad's. He took pride in his smooth, complex signature, and there was no way Mom could replicate it without it looking like fraud. I guess my mom realized she was caught after being confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the forged papers and later showed them to my dad. He was furious, but figured she had already abandoned the idea, so he let it go. Still, he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few months later, it came out that my mom was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend from high school. That was the final straw for my dad, and he filed for divorce. I moved in with him a few months later after he bought a new house. The divorce sped up when my dad pulled out the forged military school papers. And it wasn't just that. He also had evidence that she forged his signature on at least 1 credit card application, and another document I can't recall. Mom was terrified of getting arrested for fraud, so the court process moved quickly. She agreed to most of his terms. Mom got the house because Dad didn't want it, but she demanded alimony and child support since my sister chose to stay with her. The judge awarded her child support and a minimal amount of alimony, just enough to cover my sister's allowance. Mom was furious and threatened to take Dad back to court, but he held those forged documents over her head for years to keep her from pushing it. On the day I moved out to live with Dad, my sister smugly stuck out her tongue and said, "Mommy says I'm the princess and the more deserving sibling. That's why you're leaving." I just shook my head and told her to believe whatever she wanted because I didn't care anymore. I walked out the door, finally feeling free. My relationship with my sister got worse when she visited Dad's house once a week, until we eventually stopped talking altogether. I didn't care much about visiting Mom's house either. She'd turned my old room into her home office anyway.